Welcome to Securing Your Brand. Join us as we explore trademarks, copyrights, and intellectual property to ensure the protection of your creative assets.
Hello and welcome to Securing Your Brand with Secure Mark Legal. I am here once again with partners Melissa Jada and Holly McFall. How are you guys?
You're so good to be back again.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about intent to use application. I love this name and I don't want others to use it. So jumping on a social media trend, like we were talking before about the new trend, very demure, very mindful, as Jules LeBron says on social media. Can you talk a little bit about what that is and what's kind of going on with it right now?
It is such a catchy phrase. We know how things go viral very quickly and people pick up on it and start using it. And, maybe something that you said, maybe something somebody else said, but being careful of those catchy phrases, those viral trends, and then trying to use it in your business when you may not own it can be really dangerous.
That's interesting. Okay. So how does that work then? So, this is such a catchy phrase, I want to use this. Can common phrases or viral expressions be used as a trademark?
Yes, they can be if they are used in connection with a business of some sort. So anytime we're talking about trademarks, we're talking about businesses. Either you are providing a service or a good that you're selling. So if you identify this catchy phrase, that you've seen on social media and you like it and you say, I want to use it, we can use this intent to use type application with the trademark registrations. But when we file that application, we have to say what category it is, at least, that you're wanting to use it for. You can't just say, I want to use this for something, period. It has to be,
Yeah.
We have to identify at least generally what it is that you want to do with it.
Yeah, that's Jules LeBron made me think of when LeBron James tried to trademark Taco Tuesday, right? And so would this fall into that category of the intent to use?
Well, maybe not in the intent to use, but the kind of falls into this category of, do you own it? Are you the one that can use it for your business? And then is it so common that do you have a real right to own that name?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of,
which of course was everyone's question in that scenario. I mean, every Mexican restaurant uses that.
Right. Exactly. And everyone says it on, Taco Tuesday when they're putting tacos in their house and that's what they're serving for dinner. Is that a phrase that can be used to identify your business, identify the goods or services that you're selling? And is it so common that you don't have the right to own that name? That is what becomes a problem. But the intent to use application can definitely be used for a brand new business or a brand new product name. You're not quite there yet. You know that you want to get started. You've got the business set up. You know what you're going to sell. You know the goods or the service you're going to provide to the consumer. And you have this wonderful name, whether it's a catchy viral name or something you came up with yourself. You've got this amazing name that you want to make sure that you can protect and you can own. You got to go through the steps, just like a regular application. You got to make sure you do a comprehensive search. It's not currently being used for the same goods or services. You file the application, but the difference from a standard application is you don't have to provide specimens yet. You don't have to have your website up and running. You don't have to have your first sale yet. It's an intent to use it. And maybe a good thing that it's taking so long for an examiner to be assigned. You have 9 months, maybe even 12 months before the examiner gets assigned to say if you could use that. And during that time, you can use it to build your business. You can go ahead and create the website, sell the product, have your first sale, and then provide those specimens or examples of how it's being used in commerce.
And something important to keep in mind there during that waiting period before you've started is if you change your mind about what you want to use it for, you probably will have to file a brand new application because we can't just go in and amend to a different class or a different description. Generally, we can't do that. So you still have to keep that in mind to file a new application as soon as possible, as soon as you decide that you want to do something different with it, because that original application will no longer be valid unless you're also going to move forward with that original idea as well.
So specifically with the very demure, very mindful, what can you talk a little bit about what happened with that? Like, some people are trying to use it, trying to trademark it. Is that correct?
Yes. So there have been several applications that are similar to one another, not all exactly the same, that have been filed. And so generally, when it comes to trademarks, and especially, we're talking specifically about these intent to use applications. So we don't have an issue of which party had first use even before they filed, because we're assuming that none of them have been using this yet in a business sense. So we have several different applications. Some of them are in the same classes. Some are for different things. There's one that's for advertising. There's another one or two that are for cosmetics. So the differentiation there between the goods and services that are proposed to be provided means that not necessarily the very first one that filed is the one that wins in the end.
Right.
First of all, it takes a very long time, like Melissa said, for it to go through the process and actually reach registration. Right now, all of them just only have applications. No one has a trademark registration for the phrase yet.
Okay. And what is an intent to use trademark application, and how does it differ from a standard trademark application?
In a standard application, you actually have to be using it. You have to have the product. You have to show that you've made sales. You've got the ability to either purchase the good or the service that you're providing. Those things have to be shown to the examiner at the time that you file the application. With an intent to use, we have wait till the examiner is assigned. Then you file your statement of use. If you haven't done so already, you can ask for an extension of time, extend out another 90 days a few times to make sure that you have the product for sale or the good or service for sale, and you're actually using the name in commerce. The thing with the intent, the very demure, very mindful applications is not only do they have to be able to show that they're using it for goods or services, that they're using the mark in commerce, but they have an opposition period of time. There's a period of time where if it makes it through the examiner and the examiner doesn't reject it, that people could oppose it. And maybe Joel will go ahead and oppose this and say, no, this was actually my expression. This was my phrase. We're not there yet. These are just recently filed applications.
So how can a company effectively plan ahead for new products or marks that they may want to use in the future with an intent to use application?
So that's really just it. They file intent to use applications. That's basically your way of reserving a name in a sense, again, for the specific goods or services that you're proposing to use. So you have to have a good idea, from the beginning, what it is that you want to do with the mark generally. And just getting that intent to use, that 1B application on file as soon as possible so that you have the earliest date if other people come behind you to try to do the same thing.
Why is it essential to have a well thought out plan for how that mark will be used?
Well, because when trademark registrations are issued, they are issued for the very specific class or category that you've applied for and that description that you put in your trademark application. So that's why it's very important to have that plan from the beginning, because we generally can't change that description or that class once the application is filed. You would have to file then a brand new application if you change your mind or if there was a mistake in the beginning or something like that. You would have to file a brand new application, and then that would move up your application date to a later date, possibly putting you in line behind others that may have filed applications in the meantime.
It's really important to make sure you've run a comprehensive search, make sure that the name is cleared, make sure you work with an attorney so that you are providing the broadest possible description of the goods or services. But at the same time, you're giving yourself enough that you have, the examiner can say, yes, we can show specimens that we are selling this, and the examiner can see it. So that this is being used in commerce, and allow you to work with the attorney to describe the goods or services, because you don't get really a second chance at that.
So does the timeline for an intent to use application differ than a standard application? And what are some of the key milestones that a company should be aware of with intent to use?
So generally you have the same timeline from application to registration. The difference, practically speaking, is usually with a intent to use application, the business is not yet using the mark. So we don't have specimens yet. The business itself may just need more time. So with those extensions that can be filed, 3 months at a time, usually, you can go out as far as 2 years asking for more time, basically. So it can be as short as a regular application, or it can be longer because of those extensions that the business itself needs in order to be ready to go to full registration and provide those specimens, those proof of use.
What factors determine the class of goods or services for which a trademark is applied?
There are 45 different classes for trademarks. The first 30 or so are used for goods, the sale of goods. The next 10 are used for this providing of services. So you want to make sure it's one of those things when speaking with an attorney, they're going to know, well, this is a common, related class, or this is the expanded class that it could be. So maybe you're in food and beverages and you're selling light alcohol or wine. Well, maybe you're also selling beer, or you're selling coffee, or you're selling, non-alcoholic beverages. Are you going to expand into that? Are you expanding into merchandise? Do you have a retail store? Are you going to go ahead and have an online retail store? Online retail store is a service, even though you're selling a good. So you may have different classes that you can fit in with a business. If you're customizing something, is it going to be under customizations in class 40? Even if you're customizing window decorations, the goods is the window decoration, but the ability to customize it is in class 40. So that's when it really becomes important to know what that zone of expansion is, the other related classes.
Do you guys have all the classes memorized?
No.
Generally, but some of the classes include a very, very long list of kind of subcategories of things that go within it, and it's not always logical which good, especially with goods. Just think about how many hundreds of thousands of different goods there are in the world.
Yeah, you gotta try to fit it into a category.
Yeah, you would expect some to be in one category and then you find it in a completely different category. Sometimes you have to apply in more than one category because your business fits in more than one category. So it is hard to memorize every single subcategory in all of the categories. Yeah.
It's so strange. Fishing equipment, like fishing poles, fishing nets, lures, knives, all different categories.
What?
So you have to kind of be specific. Yeah, you would think it, but then hunting is a different category than knives or cutlery.
That's really interesting. So can you add a good or service later on? Like, let's say your business changes or something happens different and you want to add something. Can you file an addendum or something later on, or do you have to kind of do that up front?
No, we can narrow down what's included, but we can't expand. So you can't add things on. But sometimes when we submit an application, usually it's best to start broad so that we're asking for the broadest possible protection. So for example, if someone is selling certain types of clothing, maybe kids clothing and bathing suits, let's say, we may start out within the application applying for just clothing or apparel, something as broad as possible. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes that will go through that way, which would often be ideal, to have as much protection as possible in the event they later on want to move into men's clothing or something like that. There are instances, though, once the examining attorney with the USPTO reaches the application and does their search, they'll do a comprehensive search, and they may find that there are some conflicts or confusingly similar names in some subtype of clothing, something specific, like maybe kids clothing. And if we're only in men's apparel, it's possible that there may be a situation where the examiner will say, well, you can have the protection over here, but maybe not over here because there's a conflict. And then we would have to narrow down to satisfy the examiner, if we agree, of course.
Of course.
We don't always agree with the examiner. Oftentimes there are legal arguments that can be made. That's why there are lawyers, right? So, but generally, no, we can't add on, but we can narrow down.
That's really interesting. What can you provide examples of some common reasons why an intent to use application might be refused by the examiner?
If you don't have your specimens ready on time, even if you extend, even up to those 2 years and you're not really selling the product yet, you don't have the availability to sell the product. Same idea as just a regular application. The clearance search, you're confusingly similar to someone else's name. It's a common expression or phrase. It's geographical. It's descriptive. All of the standard reasons an application can be denied are the same reasons an intent to use application can be denied. Plus, you need to be able to provide your specimens in time and show that you are using the mark in commerce now at the time that you're ready to go ahead and get your registration.
Right, because the examiner is still going to do that full review that they would do the same with a regular application, a 1A. the examiner is still going to do that comprehensive search and determine whether the mark in and of itself is okay to be used. All of that scrutiny is still done with an intent to use application. You just have the additional step when the business is ready to file the proof of use, the specimens.
And going back to Joelle, at this point, has that name now become a common phrase? Has that name now become something that you can't own and it's open to the public for use? So if it's an intent to use application and you don't have brand recognition for it at this point, you don't have, sales, and you don't have the use and the brand already established, that intent to use application, if the phrase has become common, you may not be able to use it by the time it gets to an examiner.
That's a great point, Melissa. Yeah. So that's one reason maybe to try to move faster to get your business up and running. Because remember, by the time the examiner is looking at it, it's 9 to 12 months down the line. And that's a lot of time for a phrase like this to become commonplace. Mm-hmm. So the sooner you can get those specimens and make sure everything is ready once the examiner sees it, instead of extending it out even longer, say another year, even more time for these things to happen that could bar registration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to put you guys on the spot. All right. Question of the podcast. What do you guys think of the very demure, very mindful application, and what lesson can we learn from this filing? Holly, let's start with you.
So there's honestly not a whole lot to make an opinion on just yet. These applications, the intent to use ones, are pretty basic. It has the owner's name and address and all of those basic things and the class that they want to operate in. So, again, we don't know what's actually happening behind the scenes with, either the original one or the several that have followed. So it's really hard to say. We kind of just have to wait until they get picked up by the examining attorneys in about 9 to 12 months and see where things are at that point. Some of those could completely die if those potential owners decide not to move forward with the phrase at all, or decide to do something different and have to file new applications. It's really hard to say, but I guess the one thing I could say is that the ones that are filed already have an advantage over anyone who hasn't yet filed, just because of that order of priority.
Melissa, how say you?
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out, because Joel's has an opportunity to file an application as first use and oppose the other marks as the originator of the catchy phrase. Being a social influencer these days is a business. As of the date of recording of this podcast, Joel's has not filed an application, and we don't know if he's going to file an application yet and see what they do, because social media influencing is a business, as I said. Right. But it'll also be interesting to see if they can provide specimens and show that they're using this and they created brand recognition, either in, one's for advertising. One of the intent to use applications is cosmetics. Have they produced a brand? Have they produced the services or the goods? And is that going to be able to? So about 9 to 12 months. And then we got to wait to see after it goes to examiner if Joel's opposes their application and what that plays out in what they call the TAB, Trademarks Trials and Appeal Board, and see if he appeals those applications. So stick around. We'll be back and we'll let you know what happens to it.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see. Well, thanks for tuning in to Securing Your Brand with Melissa, Jada, and Holly McFall. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and follow everything going on with Secure Mark Legal. Melissa, Holly, thanks so much for chatting. It's been great talking to you guys again.
All right. Thank you.
It was great to be here again.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.